in the world through the 7 spheres or mountains of influence. Welcome to the Truth and Liberty broadcast, brought to you by Andrew Wommack Ministries.
Hello, this is Andrew Wommack, and welcome to our Monday night Truth and Liberty live cast. I'm here with Richard Harris. He's our chief counsel, I think is the term that we've given him now, and he runs our practical government school here at Charis Bible College. And tonight we are really privileged to have Jack Phillips with us. He's the owner of Masterpiece Cake Shop in Lakewood, Colorado. And also we've got a lawyer from Alliance Defending Freedom with us, Jonathan Scruggs. And we will be to them in just a few minutes, but we want to let you know how you can interact. Of course, most of you know that Jack is the one that took a legal court case all the way to the Supreme Court and won. Praise God. And I'm sure that you're going to have some questions for them. So, Richard, why don't you share with them how they can participate?
Sure, absolutely. Well, yeah, so if you want to participate in the live cast tonight, you can put your questions on the internet. So in our live chat feature on truthandliberty.net, you can post your questions there, or on Facebook, you can do it in the comments section. We encourage you to watch the live cast tonight on our website, truthandliberty.net, because I think it's going to be a little more reliable. There's a chance we could get censored on Facebook, and
we have had that happen in the past. Every time we say something controversial, our Facebook just cuts out miraculously.
Coincidental, but yeah. So that's how you can participate tonight. And if you need to register on our website so you can be eligible for our weekly product giveaway, and so we'll talk about that in just a second.
All right, you want to
go ahead and do that? Yeah.
Yeah, this is George Washington's Rules of Civility and Decent Behavior. I tell you what.
It's a great title.
Yeah, this is 250 years old or more, and yet it is needed today. So this is our giveaway, and all you have to do to get that is just go to our website and register, and we will pick a winner. We'll announce it next week. Who won last week?
Well, I'll tell you who won is Tracy Hobson. So congratulations, Tracy. You should be getting an email from us shortly if you haven't already. And so congratulations on that, Tracy.
And we've got a lot of things happening. We aren't going to take time to go through all of it, but we just finished a meeting with Congressman Bob McEwen and with General Boykin. It was fantastic. And then last week we had our Charis Campus Days, and we had people from all over the world come to check out our Bible College. And this week we've got a musical coming up with David. We've already got over 2,000 people registered and have bought tickets for that. And then on the 25th, I believe it is, we have John Tesh with us for a free concert. John Tesh has become a friend over the last couple of years. He was miraculously healed of cancer without any treatments. And he's done, I think, either 6 or 7 PBS specials on PBS. And they are coming here and filming this. And they asked if they could do another special with nothing but questions and answers. And so John and I are going to sit there and talk about healing, and they're going to air this on PBS.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's going to be a great thing. So we got a lot coming up. You can go to our website, awmi.net, and get more information. And last thing, before we get back into the interview, is we have people at our phones right now. We probably have 50 or 60 people in there answering the phones. And if you have a question, if there's some way that we can help you, if we can pray with you, any way that we can help you at all, it's 719-635-1111. And they will be able to pray with you.
Yeah.
You got anything else?
Well, just one thing. Truth and Liberty, we're so thankful for those of you who support us financially, and we are supported by your generosity. And if you'd like to give to support this live cast, you can text GIVE, G-I-V-E, to 719-301-2552, or just go on our website, truthandliberty.net, to the donate function.
Okay, so now, as we said, we are really privileged to have Jack Phillips with us, the owner of Masterpiece Cake Shop in Lakewood, Colorado. And I'm sure that everybody knows you, Jack, or has heard about you, but real quickly, could you, just to introduce yourself in case there's somebody tuning in and doesn't know what happened, could you give us the short version of what's been going on with you the last few years?
Yeah, sure. I'm Jack Phillips, and I own Masterpiece Cake Shop in Lakewood, Colorado. It's a suburb of Denver. And back in July of 2012, I had two homosexual men that came into my store and requested me to create a cake for their same-sex wedding. And when I told them that that was a cake that I couldn't create, but that I would gladly sell them anything else in my shop, they left the shop swearing at me, flipping me off, and then through the Colorado Civil Rights Commission. And the case on its way through the courts and ended up at the U.S. Supreme Court.
And so you didn't refuse to serve them. You just weren't going to decorate a cake celebrating their union.
Correct. I serve everybody who comes in my shop. It's, when you're in retail, that's what you do. Get into retail because you love people. And there are just certain cakes that I can't create for anybody. And they asked me to create one of those cakes that I couldn't create.
All right, well, Jack, I understand that, and I think most of the people watching us understand this. But you know, there may be somebody watching this who would say, "Well, that's hate speech, or that's hate actions and stuff." How do you defend this?
I love people that come in my shop. I try and serve them the best that I can. Just that there are cakes that I cannot create for anybody, and to create something like that would not be loving. It would be going against what I believe that the Bible teaches.
Well, that's a big statement.
And so, anyway, I'm sure that as you went through the court system, how long did it take you to get all the way to the Supreme Court?
To and through the U.S. Supreme Court and get our ruling. We got the ruling in June 4th, 2018. It was 3 weeks short of 6 years, which was really pretty quick.
Wow.
And what did this do to you, Jack? I can't even imagine being in court for 6 years. How did this affect you, your family? What happened?
There were some very difficult times at times. There were times that my wife was afraid to come into the shop because you didn't know what was going to be there. We had hateful phone calls and emails, even death threats. The Civil Rights Commission, when they ruled that I had violated the Colorado revised statute, saying that I discriminated, which I didn't, because like I say, I serve everybody. Wasn't a case of what their orientation was. But the Civil Rights Commission took away my wedding cake business, which was about 40% of our income at the time.
And so you still don't have that back? So you still don't have your wedding cake business?
No, we were still figuring out what to do with that when the Civil Rights Commission dismissed the charges against me just a couple of weeks ago.
Well, you know, I've taken a stand on a lot of things, specifically the homosexual issue and abortion, and I've gotten some really negative comments. And even though my wife is in agreement with me, she says, "Couldn't you just not be as vocal?" Did you get any of this from your family? Because it really is hard on the spouse.
No, not at all. Everybody knows that what we did was right. We serve the people who come into the shop, but there are just cakes that we can't create, and that would be dishonoring to our God. And everybody in my family is right on board with that.
So how did it go from the Christian community? Did you get 100% support, or did you even have some Christians that were upset with you?
Yeah, we've had Christians who say, you should just make the cake. But overall, the support from not only the Christian community, but the community in Denver, around the world as well, has been very supportive. We've had a great deal of support even from the gay community, from atheists, from transgenders, from everybody.
Well,
but the negative support has been very harmful.
Man, that's great to hear. I didn't know that. I'm sure that our viewers would be really pleased to hear that, because all we hear usually is all of the bad things going down. But you said even atheists, gay community, and those people, there were people that supported you.
Well, I've had gay friends that I've known from before all this, and then I've made new friends who are homosexual, who are gay, because they heard of the story and wanted to come in and find out who we were and what kind of people we actually were and what we did. Come find out that it was nothing like the media reports. That we serve everybody, we love everybody, we just don't create every cake that's that we're asked to create. And some have become good friends. Man, that's great to hear. I didn't know that. I thought that the homosexual LGBTQ XYZ community was pretty much in lockstep over all of this, but you're saying there's a lot of them that recognize that this is intolerant on their part. Right. And they recognize that all Americans should be free to live and work according to their conscience without fear of punishment from the government. And when the government steps in to do these kind of things, they know it's wrong too.
And we also have with us Jonathan Scruggs, and he is a representative of the Alliance Defending Freedom. And if I'm not mistaken, Jonathan, your organization there is the one that took the case and represented it all the way to the Supreme Court.
Absolutely. We are proud to have the privilege of representing Jack, and we represent not just him, but creative professionals all across the country who are just trying to live out their faith in what they do.
And how do you do this? I suspect that it's not cheap to go all the way to the Supreme Court and battle something. How does Alliance Defending Freedom pay for this?
Well, we exist because of the generosity of donors and of friends who donate to our organization. We represent all our clients for free, beginning at the lowest court and going all the way to the Supreme Court. And we are repeatedly at the Supreme Court, especially in the past couple of years. So it's just been an honor to do that and to be able to explain the rights of Jack Phillips and explain the rights of Christians all across the country, that they, as Jack noted, are not discriminating. They're serving all people, but it's just about the right of these people, the right of these businesses to control what they say. And every American should have that freedom.
And so what kind of an effect do you think winning at the Supreme Court had? Has it slowed down any of this legislation against the faith community?
Well, it's definitely had an impact. We've already seen in other court cases that Jack's win in Masterpiece has made it more difficult to come after people of faith, that the Supreme Court sent a clear message that the government cannot target people of faith and of all faiths because of what they believe. And so we're using Jack's victory all across the country, whether it be in other creative professional cases and representing adoption agencies, representing homeless shelters who the government is trying to shut down just because of what they believe. And Jack's decision is playing an important role in stopping that unjust actions.
So, Jack, I've got a note here that says you had quite an experience with the homeless man the day that you got the notification that the Supreme Court would hear your case. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, to be heard at the United States Supreme Court is not something you just go out and do. Like, I'm going to sue you and we'll go to the Supreme Court. They turn away over 99% of the cases that are presented to them. And nobody was really expecting my case to be granted. And so week after week after week, I would watch the court's announcement of what they had decided from the week before. And they would put my case off week after week from basically October through the last week of the session in June. And so I was watching my computer, waiting to find out if they had granted my case or denied it. And I saw on the screen, Masterpiece Cake Shop has been granted. And it took my breath away. It was so exciting to see. But I had nobody to share it with except for a homeless man who comes into my shop regularly. And so I turned to him and I said, "Hey, I get to go to the Supreme Court." And he said, "Yeah, I got to go to court on Wednesdays."
You really impressed him.
I did, but I didn't need a parole officer to go with me.
Well, you know, you would think that when you won your battle at the Supreme Court that this is the end of it, yeah. But I live here in Colorado, and the Civil Rights Commission came after you again. Tell us about that.
Well, the very day that I shared that wonderful news with my homeless friend, a lawyer here in Colorado called our shop. It was a chaotic day. We had news cameras and newspapers and reporters and just a really chaotic, crazy day. And so I had been answering the phone pretty much all the time since the case began, but I wasn't able to. So my wife picked up the phone on one of the calls. We had a flood of calls all day. It's just crazy. And a lawyer here in Colorado called and was requesting a custom cake from us. And the cake was to be blue on the outside and pink on the inside. And the colors were to demonstrate and celebrate change in gender from male to female. So while we tried to explain to this attorney that that's a cake that we couldn't create because of the message that it would send, we were glad to sell this attorney anything else in our store. But that wasn't good enough. The attorney filed a complaint with the Colorado Civil Rights Commission again. And 3 weeks after we got the ruling from the United States Supreme Court that following June, that we had won 7-2, 3 weeks later, the Colorado Civil Rights Commission decided they had probable cause to pursue the second case. And so they launched another lawsuit against us.
That would make you think the timing of that on that exact day and everything, that this was a setup. I don't know that I would sit there and say that, but it sure appears that way to me. Make you
It
think
sure
so.
looked like it, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you discover anything else about that particular gentleman or his agenda that made you suspect?
Yeah, we did. Jonathan can answer some of that better than I can, but we also got an email and phone calls from this person generally harassing us and asking us to do other things. So that was not something that people normally do when they want to order a cake legitimately. So that adds to the fact that we thought it was a setup.
Yeah, and I can jump in there. It seems we discovered records indicating that this lawyer had called Jack before asking for various cakes, even cakes celebrating Satan's birthday, that he would make that. So it was obviously an effort to single out Jack, to get him to decline a cake and essentially to get the state of Colorado to sue Jack again. And so that's exactly what happened.
And so this time, though, you decided to counter-sue them, if I'm not mistaken. How did you deal with this?
Well, yeah, I can jump in there too. Rather than wait around and have to go through the process that Jack went through the first time, that 6-year process, we decided to file our own lawsuits in federal court to try to defend Jack. And we did that, and that began a process of we had to obtain documents from the state of Colorado, and that's what eventually led to the state folding and settling the case, is because we discovered that the commissioners, the current commissioners on the Colorado Civil Rights Commission, essentially made inappropriate comments and affirmed some of the inappropriate comments that the past commissioners made. So just to rewind and to help you give your listeners some context, in the first Supreme Court decision, or the first lawsuit that was filed against Jack, the commissioners compared Jack's religious beliefs to those of slaveholders and to those who supported the Holocaust. And the U.S. Supreme Court found out about that in the first case and condemned the state of Colorado for such religious bigotry and religious discrimination, and said that was wrong. But the state of Colorado didn't learn its lesson because the new commissioners, which, in this new case, effectively said on record that there was nothing wrong with those previous comments, that the commission was right the first time and it's right the second time too. And once those comments came out on record, the state quickly settled the case.
Wow.
And so what was the difference? Did you countersue or do anything the first time, or did you just defend yourself? Was there an aggressive posture the second time that you didn't have the first time? What was the difference?
Well, I think the big difference is we'd already won at the Supreme Court the first time. It's very strange and rare for a state to lose at the Supreme Court against the same person and seek to accuse him of violating the same law for similar actions. And so once Colorado's lawyers realized what was going on, and once these comments came out there on record, essentially they were ignoring a U.S. Supreme Court decision. And judges typically don't look kindly on that. So that was really the big difference, acting proactively, but also having that previous decision that we could rely on.
So you actually had leverage the second time that you didn't have the first time around because you hadn't had it ruled in your favor.
That's right. That's right.
All right. Well, Jack, let me ask you this question. There's a lot of Christians. I haven't been as vocal or as well known as what you have or anything like that, but I have gotten a lot of criticism about we're just supposed to turn the other cheek and, just go with the flow and things like this. And for you to stand up, I'm sure that there's a lot of even Christians that will sit there and think that we shouldn't be doing this. I'm 100% behind what you're doing. I cheered you all the way, and when you won in the Supreme Court, man, I was praising God and thanking God. But I'm sure you've been asked this question or you've been confronted before. How do you justify a Christian taking a stand and fighting back the way that you did?
I think that in this case, we have to. There are times when we shouldn't, but in this case, this cake was a celebration of a marriage that was totally against what the Bible teaches. And so we had to fight that. and defend marriage, so to speak. And people will say that you should just make the cake. And no, I think we should serve the people. We should, like I said, I will serve them any day, anytime. The two men that sued me, or the third person that sued me, they're welcome in my shop anytime, and I'll serve them anything that I have. But I don't create every cake that people ask me to create. And no creative professional should be forced to.
And I'm sure that you dealt with this from a constitutional standpoint, that this is what our nation was founded on, freedom of religion and your faith and stuff. And I think that the reason we're in the mess we're in is because Christians have extracted themselves from the public sector and taken a stand on things. So I appreciate what you're doing, and we need a lot more Jack Phillips out there. I appreciate you, brother. It's been awesome.
Thank you.
Well, Jack, you said something earlier, if I could jump in. You said that to bake that cake for those gentlemen would not be love. Didn't I hear that right? And what did you mean when you said that? Because a lot of Christians now say, oh, we just need to love people. But how do you see it?
Yeah, I believe the Bible defines marriage as Jesus said that a man shall leave his father and mother, and the two shall be one flesh. And so he marriage right there. And for us to redefine it would be going against what the Bible teaches, what Jesus himself taught, and that would not be loving.
And it's amazing to me how that I don't know what you call it, but the left, the liberals, the extreme, they have co-opted all of the proper terms. They're saying that we're operating in love and that you're intolerant, when the truth is the left is far more intolerant than anybody else, and they are hypocritical in their stance. And you can see it in the way that you said you got death threats, that there was times that you were, thinking about your safety and all of the things that have happened. Mm-hmm. It's totally unfair.
Yeah, but we still need to do what's right. We still need to live our lives in ways that honor Jesus Christ.
So this law that they came after you on, I think people refer to these laws as Shoji Laws, sexual orientation and gender identity. And Jonathan, maybe you can comment on this, but it seems to me that the left is taking these laws and trying to apply what's normally, anti-discrimination laws on the basis of race and gender and so forth, and trying to apply it to homosexuality as if it, like race, was some kind of an immutable characteristic, And how is it, that, what's the difference? Why is homosexuality or sexual orientation not the same as race? How is this unfair? Maybe Jack can comment as well.
It's a good question. So what you see is these laws definitely have expanded over time. They're called Shoji Laws or public accommodation laws. And historically, they've applied to prevent discrimination based on race. But that clearly can't apply to Jack because, as Jack noted, he serves all people from the LGBT community. It's about what message he can't convey. And that's the clear distinction. It just so happens that on this topic of same-sex marriage and gender identity, that government officials are interpreting the law really to force people to say messages they disagree with. And when Jack stands up for his beliefs, he's really trying to protect everybody. We shouldn't force an LGBT web designer to create a website criticizing same-sex marriage for a church, right? That's just common sense. We shouldn't force a Muslim artist to create a poster celebrating Easter. These rights and principles should apply across the board. And this has nothing to do with discrimination against a whole class of people. That's what was involved in race discrimination. But that's not true here, where Jack loves and serves people in the LGBT community. It's about the message you're asked to convey. It's about what you're asked to convey, not who walks in the door. So that's the clear difference.
Well, it seems like from what I've seen that this is this overreach or violation of rights is kind of manifesting in all kinds of different contexts. I think ADF has several of these kind of cases. What are you guys seeing in that respect? You seeing a lot of different problems coming up from this?
Absolutely. So as we noted, creative professionals is one area. People like Jack. We represent another web designer in Colorado, filmmaker in Minnesota, an art studio in Phoenix. So in all these different venues, people are being asked to affirm a message they disagree with. But we also see it in the context of gender identity. We represent a homeless shelter, for example, in Anchorage, Alaska, and they serve women who have suffered from physical and emotional abuse Many of these women have been suffering from sex trafficking, and this homeless shelter just seeks to protect these women. But the city of Anchorage is using one of these laws, one of these Shoji Laws, to try to force this women's only shelter to admit men, and to force these women who have suffered abuse from men to sleep next to men.
Transgender men, right?
Exactly, transgender men, men who identify as women. So you can imagine, and some of these women we've gotten to come into court and testify that they would rather sleep in the woods than have to sleep next to a man from what they've suffered in the past. So these laws really are going to affect women and people and other minorities who are hurting, and it has these negative implications.
Well, this is so much bigger than just Jack's cake shop and stuff. This is like the tip of the spear that the devil is using, and if he can get Jack out of business and limit his freedom of expression of his Christian faith, well, then it just opens up the door to all of these other things. So I really believe that Christians have got to start standing up and fighting, and it doesn't need to be an isolated case. We can do this on our jobs. We need to start speaking out and doing things. And I just really appreciate you, Jack, again, for standing up. I know it might have been easier to go the other direction, but man, this is, I believe, going to inspire some other people to do something.
Well, and one of those opportunities right now, Jonathan, I think there's a bill at the United States House of Representatives. They're calling it the Equality Act, but maybe you could comment on that. I think it's trying to force on the whole country the laws that Jack has just had to fight. And what's going on with that?
Yeah, it is called the Equality Act, and essentially what it does is it amends federal laws to add sexual orientation and gender identity as protected classes. And what that effectively does is it takes the law that compelled Jack to violate his beliefs and makes it nationwide. It affects that law that I mentioned with respect to the women's only homeless shelter. It makes that a nationwide law, and that is going to have enormous repercussions in schools for having sex differentiated bathrooms and locker rooms and sports teams. It's going to affect people like Jack Phillips, filmmakers and creative artists, to force them to say things they disagree with. So the effect this law could have is really astounding, and it's a sea change in how the federal law has enacted and regulated these fields.
So how do we fight back against all of this? I know that we can pray and stuff, but I mean, they are filing suit against all of these Christians because they say that they're being neglected or discriminated against. What can Christians do to counter this in the secular realm?
Well, a bunch of things, as you noted. One thing is to get and talk to your neighbor. I think Justice Alito gave a talk sometime recently ago and said one of the obligations of all of us is to go to our neighbor and expound the importance of religious liberty. Go to our website, www.adflegal.org. You can learn about these issues, learn about these cases, talk to your representative about these type of laws, and just be involved, be knowledgeable. Those are important things to do because that's the public good. We want to act in a way that benefits the public good, benefits people's flourishing in general, and being involved in our communities is one way to do that.
Well, one of the simple things that every person can do is just start voting and get out and not only cast a vote, but campaign. Whether you go out and door to door, talk to your friends and start making a difference. Because we have been testifying in front of the state capitol in Colorado about I forgot what they call it, but I dislike their terminology.
Comprehensive sex.
Yeah, comprehensive sex education. What it is LGBTQ indoctrination. Right. Forcing this stuff. And so we've been fighting against it. And in Colorado, they have local control. And if people would just get out and get on the school board, we could stop this stuff regardless of what they do at the state capitol. So there's something that every single person can do. And we've got to stand up or this is going to keep happening.
Right.
So we got to make a stand.
Absolutely.
And Jack, I was really encouraged by the things you're saying about some atheists and homosexuals actually supporting you because they recognize that this is taking away your freedom and your liberty. And so I think that there is more support for godly morals, but there is what I call a spirit of Antichrist. Most people call it political correctness. But there is a fear saying something that might offend somebody and stuff. But it's just the devil attacking our society, and we're going to lose our liberties if we don't stand
That's right.
up and start doing something. So,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the people that you referred to, people that I've become acquainted with that are homosexual or atheists, they understand that this isn't about Jack and making wedding cakes and my bakery. It's about them too. It's about every American and every creative professional being able to live and work according to their conscience without fear of punishment from the government. And Jonathan can talk about the filmmakers, you mentioned them, but they face serious fines and threats from the government of Minnesota if they were to pursue their livelihood the way they want to.
I tell you what, go ahead, Jonathan.
A lot of these laws are even more severe than the one Jack has encountered. For example, here in Arizona, we represent an art studio, and there's a criminal penalty for these two young women who can't celebrate same-sex marriage and with the art they create, and they're facing numerous days, numerous months in jail, and up to $2,500 fines per day if they don't comply with the law. 6 months in jail, even.
Wow.
So these are serious penalties that the government's bringing to bear to force people to get in line, and that's just not good for anyone. When the government can tell people what they can and can't say, what art they can and can't create, like they were telling Jack, everyone loses in that situation.
When Michael Ferris, the head of ADF, was with us in November, he made one of the most profound statements. The way he said it, he says that the liberals have been using the court system to force on the American public things that the majority of Americans are against.
That's right.
And just the way he placed it made it really clear. And I think that that's the reason we see such a battle in this area, is because Trump, regardless what people think about Trump, man, he has changed the judicial makeup of the Supreme Court and the appellate court, and he's got hundreds of judges in the pipeline that are being delayed. But I think that they're running scared. I think that they see that, man, they may lose this avenue that they've been forcing this stuff. So they are trying to ram this stuff through with everything that they're.
I was just in Washington last week, and one of the speakers was commenting on how President Trump's lasting legacy is, among other things, is going to be the transformation of the federal judiciary. So he's got 95 confirmations to date. I think he's up to, with 57 district judges and 30 something circuit judges and 2 Supreme Court justices. He's looking at possibly getting a third if Ginsburg retires or, passes away. So it's awesome.
Praise God. Man, I'm excited about that. And the good thing is that could affect us for generations to come. Right. So they see the handwriting on the wall.
That's right. I
really believe, guys, that we are, I know that this is taking a big step to say this, but I think that we are in the beginning of a revival. I think that the church is beginning to wake up, and we've just been fat and happy. And, Christians are loving God and loving their family and living their life. And they aren't as plugged into the world as the unbelievers have been. But this is waking us up.
Yeah.
That if we don't do something, we're going to lose this nation. So I'm actually encouraged. I think good things are happening.
Yeah.
It's awesome. All right, do we need to take some questions here?
Yeah, you ready for some questions?
All right, Jack, are you ready for this? We hope they aren't too hard. Too personal. If they are, you just say, I don't want to answer that. That'll be fine.
Well, first I just want to mention we've got people watching from all over the United States and around the world tonight, with states represented including Missouri, Pennsylvania, Arkansas, New Jersey, Oklahoma, Kansas, Tennessee, North Dakota, and on, Texas, Wisconsin, California, and even Canada, Hong Kong, South Africa, and Australia. So we're excited to have all you guys watching tonight. Let me share with you one of these questions is from Ruthie on AWM chat, and she asks Jack, oftentimes if someone who, though is innocent, is accused of being homophobic or racist, they're quick to apologize and change their ways to accept everything. What were a few things that helped you stay strong, and what advice would you give to those in similar circumstances?
I've said it a couple times on this show already that I serve everybody, but I also serve Jesus Christ. And so I can't live my life 2 separate ways. I can't accept the things that the Bible teaches and change them to fit somebody's convenience. So I serve everybody, and I serve Him first.
So it's your relationship with the Lord that kept you strong. You have to be true to Him.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate. I've said
That's
this
great.
a number of times, but Jack, I admire you because that's something that a lot of people hadn't done.
Well, Jack, you're such a meek man, and I think people might underestimate how difficult this has been for you. And I don't want to put words in your mouth or anything, but going through 6 years of litigation, I'm sure you had your moments of stress and anxiety about this. And I think that Colorado even ordered you to re-educate your staff, and including like your mom worked for you in the bakery and some things like that. What was that like?
Yeah, my mom quit working for me a couple of years ago. She was 89, and she did some bookwork and things in the office. And the state did, in fact, say that I needed to retrain my staff, report to the commission quarterly for 2 years to tell them on my progress on that. And my mom told me directly she would not be retrained. So
She's the one that trained you. She's not about to let
That's
you
right.
retrain her.
Were they telling you that?
change what she told me and tell her that what she taught me was wrong. So
Wow. So they were requiring you to tell your staff certain messages, like admit that you were wrong and
Homosexuality's okay, and you need to celebrate it.
yeah.
and I have to, change my policies, start creating cakes that I would never create for anybody. And then, like I said, report to them quarterly for 2 years on my progress on these things.
Boy, that sounds a little bit like Soviet Russia to me. But
It's terrible. It's completely against everything this nation was founded upon. It's amazing that we got this far, but praise God, I think it's turning around.
Well,
Another question?
Here's a question, and maybe Andrew, this one's good for you. And it says, Cowboy Tom on chat says, could someone comment on the trend within the evangelical churches to embrace the homosexual lifestyle as a legitimate expression of love?
Well, I think that'd be really good for Jack because he's been the brunt of this. So how would you feel about churches encouraging their people to embrace homosexuality as an acceptable lifestyle?
I think they need to embrace Jesus Christ first in the teachings of the Bible.
That's pretty simple.
Pretty simple.
You're just right direct.
Yeah, that's great.
Amen. That's
great.
good. I agree 100%. And I think, I had a friend of mine in San Francisco who pastored a large church. And so I just brought up the situation about the homosexuals, and I said, so do you have homosexuals coming to your church? And he said, yeah, we do. And I said, so do you ever mention it? Do you ever make a statement about it from Scripture? And he said, oh no, God's given me great wisdom. I don't want to say anything that would offend them, so I never counter it. We never mention it or anything. And I told him, I said, so what about the young people that are in your church, the kids? Going to the San Francisco public schools, they are going to be indoctrinated and told that this is acceptable. And if they don't hear a biblical perspective, how are they ever going to be able to make a judgment between this? And it's like he had never thought of that. Mm-hmm. And he says, well, I had never looked at it from that standpoint. But man, Christians have got to take a stand. We're the only ones that actually have the moral foundation. I just was reading some things today about John Adams, and John Adams was saying, I'm going to rephrase it, but he was saying that democracy or a representative government is completely unfit for anybody but a moral and religious people. And we are the only ones that have the right to define what morality is. If you say it's all relative and that we can now change it and so that homosexuality is okay and bestiality is okay and infanticide is okay, well then, man, it just leads to absolute chaos. We can't live that way.
Well, there's another question here which kind of gets to the core of this, I think, and it's from Repa Cheap, which is a funny name on AWM chat, but in the news today, and I can't pronounce the gentleman's last name, but Mayor Pete is what I think he's a candidate for president on the Democratic side, and he said to Vice President Pence, he said, if you got a problem with who I am, meaning being gay, your problem is not with me. Your quarrel, sir, is with my Creator. And I think that gets to the core of this, isn't it? God doesn't make people gay and then command them to behave heterosexual. He creates everybody with the ability to choose. And, we need to be conveying the scriptural message on that. And our objection is with the conduct, with the sin itself. What do you say about that, Andrew?
Well, I don't want to occupy things here. I'm going to just say this quickly and get back to you guys and ask you some questions. But I just taught last week for the first time in my life from Judges chapter 19 through 21. And for those that don't know what that says, it is one of the weirdest passages in the entire Bible about a man cutting his wife up into 12 pieces and sending her to all of the tribes of Israel. And they came together and wiped out all but 600 of the Benjamites. And anyway, I have passed over these verses a lot because I thought, God, why is this in the Bible? But the Lord just revealed to me last month that the reason He put these terrible things in the Bible is because that started with saying there was no king in Israel. Every man did what was right in his own sight. And it ended, the last verse of Judges, there was no king in Israel. Every man did that which was right in his own sight. And I believe that the reason the Lord put that in there is to show what happens when people are left to define right and wrong on their own. And it was demonic. It was barbaric. And so I say all of that to say that we have to have standards of morality, and it's not up to us to pick our own thing. That makes us God.
Right.
God is our creator, and God established what right and wrong is, and it's recorded in the Bible, and we have to take a stand on that.
That's right.
So that was my quick answer.
That was a very good answer. Well, Misty in Oklahoma City asked this question. Are these groups looking up Christian businesses and purposely asking for things or items that they know go against our faith just so they can sue us?
Or you could say, are they doing this intentionally?
Yeah, are they targeting or doing it intentionally? Yeah.
Jonathan, how about you answering that? I'm sure you have an opinion.
Yeah, well, evidently from the facts of Jack's second lawsuit, that seems to be the case, right? When this lawyer learned about Jack's shop on the same day that the U.S. Supreme Court accepted his first case. So that was in the news, it was in the media, and just so happened that same day he called up Jack shops of all cake shops in Colorado and specifically asked him for this cake. Jack's Cake Shop had to decline. So I think there is that element of people being targeted, which is sad. I mean, we have Christians who call us all across the country who tell us, hey, I have to leave the industry. I can't live out my faith because I'm afraid I'm going to be sued. And that's one of the reasons Alliance Defending Freedom exists. We exist to protect these people and protect people of all faith all across the country. One of the great things about the First Amendment is it ensures that the government can't target people. It can't show religious hostility just because of someone's particular religious belief or practice. And the fact that that is going on across the country really is a sad thing.
I've got a friend of mine who's a pastor of a church over 1,000 people, and he had a lady come to his church who was a lesbian, and she had a little girl, and she stayed there for 2 or 3 months, and the little girl was in the children's ministry and things like this. And then one day they got up and made an announcement that they would need some help in the children's ministry. And so this woman went and volunteered. And because she was a lesbian, they told her no. Now, they didn't treat her badly and they welcomed her into the church, but they said they didn't want her, instilling those beliefs in the other kids. And it turned out she sued them. And it was a total setup. And they sent her in. And so this is not an isolated case. I mean, these are militant people that are pushing their agenda through the court system. And that's one of the reasons I'm so encouraged that we are seeing the court system move in the other direction.
Yeah. Well, it seems like a lot of people that are supporting these kind of laws and so on, their message to the Christians is, well, you guys need to just keep that to yourselves and stay within the 4 walls of your church.
Well, why don't they keep their beliefs to themselves? This is something that I've never understood, is if a person is a homosexual, that's a pretty intimate deal. Why do they have to tell everybody? Why do they have to broadcast it and come out and promote this?
And why do they need our approval?
That's right. They want validation, and I really believe it's because their own conscience is condemning them, and they're hoping to, mitigate the conviction that they feel by having everybody else validate them.
But that's one of the great things about what Jack has done is you're saying, Jack, my faith affects every part of my life, right? You can't just go to church and be a Christian. Christ has called you to live according to His Word in every part of your life.
That's true. Yeah. And that's what I want to do. I want to honor him in everything that I do, in the way that I treat my customers and the way that I treat my employees and the work that I do.
Amen.
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 Well, so some of these other cases that ADF has, those are pretty alarming situations. If people out there want to support the work that ADF is doing, how can they do that, Jonathan?
Really, the best way is, I noted before, is go to our website, www.adflegal.org, and you can learn about our cases. You can donate there. You can just become more knowledgeable about these issues. You can learn about Jack's case and many of the trials he faced and how he responded. One thing that is so encouraging to represent people like Jack. We represent great clients, and they live out their faith, not just in their business and their personal lives, but even in litigation, even when they're being sued by someone else. And that's really just a testimony to his faith. And ADF is really proud to stand with Jack and all other clients.
Excellent.
And Jack, you had mentioned that you lost 40% of your business through the cake section being put down. And so you've got a GoFundMe page and also your website. People can contribute. How do they do that?
Yeah, if you go to GoFundMe and look up Masterpiece Cake Shop, they can donate there. You can go to my website and there's a link to a site called Continue to Give, and they can donate there. But just as importantly, they can contact me or adflegal.org. I will connect them with adflegal.org so they can donate directly to them, because without their help, we would have been out of business immediately when this first came up.
Praise God.
Fantastic. And this Equality Act that's pending in the House, this is actually pretty serious. And I don't think it's anything that Donald Trump would sign into law, but it's the beginning of the move to put all of this on a national level. And folks, if you want to express your opinion about that, let your representatives know, you can go to a website called allforfreedom.com and let your voices be heard there. But, some people say, well, we don't have to worry about this. This is just out in the public sphere. And Jonathan, I'd be interested to know your take on this. But I think personally that the advocates for this kind of restriction, that they're not going to be content with just people like Jack, that their ultimate goal is probably to silence the church and to force this agenda on churches and pastors and that kind of thing. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Oh, well, for sure. We actually have represented churches that these same types of laws the government has tried to apply them in Iowa, in Massachusetts, where the government initially said that because your worship service is open to the public, you have to allow people of the opposite sex in your restrooms. And we had to file a lawsuit in those situations. And thankfully, the government quickly backed down. But that just kind of goes to show you the logic of things like the Equality Act and similar laws, and they can be used to attack the church.
Yeah.
And that, people of faith need to be aware of that, people like Jack, he is standing up not just for other businesses, but for really the whole church nationwide.
Amen.
Yeah.
We just had retired General Boykin, Jerry Boykin, with us, and he was on staff at a college. And he was asked a question about homosexuality, about would they let a transgender go into a women's restroom. And he says, if you go in there with my granddaughter, he says, you aren't going to need an operation. He says, I'll take. And anyway, they kicked him out of the school because of it. Now, there was such an uproar that they reinstated him, but they told him it's just briefly until the storm blows over, and then they got rid of him. So what you're saying, Jonathan, it's affecting every area of our society, and they aren't going to be quiet until they basically have quieted the church. We got to stand up and start taking a stand.
I read about cases involving Christian adoption agencies or Catholic adoption agencies not wanting to place children in homosexual marriages and things like that, and they're coming after them. Read about doctors in Christian hospitals not wanting to do sex change operations on otherwise healthy people and that sort of thing. So, this is real, and we need to stand up and pay attention to it.
Amen. We got time for some more questions. Have we got any?
Let's see if we got
questions?
any in here.
I think you lost your screen. Oh, there.
I got it.
All
okay. Right. Here's a question for you. I think would be good for you, Jonathan. And this viewer wants to know, how should we respond to? Well, that's not the one. You want to know, can or did you sue Colorado for lost wages for not being able to sell wedding cakes for 6 years?
Yeah, I mean, we were just happy. We had the first litigation matter, and then right on the heels we had the second, and that was our primary focus, was really to try to protect Jack from getting sued in this ongoing lawsuits, and also to protect his religious liberty going forward. And I think that's something we accomplished, and hopefully Jack will be able to provide a go to re-enter into the wedding industry going forward.
You know, to me, though, it looks like that Christians are always on the defensive at the best. Right. I mean, sometimes they just turn the other cheek and do nothing, but at the best, most of them are defensive. I think we're going to have to go on the offensive and start attacking these things and calling them out and showing the bigotry and the hatred and the intolerance on the other side and start taking a stand, which kind of goes against most Christians' desires. They just want to get along and live peaceably with people, but if we don't stand up and fight, we're going to lose these freedoms.
That's right. Well, here's another question. This viewer, Alan, on Facebook asked, he says, Trump authorized a religious liberty task force during Jeff Sessions' tenure, and he's curious, what is that task force doing in regard to these issues? Do you have any knowledge on that one?
A little. I mean, I know they've issued some useful pronouncements. A lot of these laws are local laws right now. That the federal government has limited control over, but thankfully we have the First Amendment. That's the most important task force. That's the most important pronouncement, and that's a constitutional amendment we often relied on. We relied on in Jack's cases. So that's I've been our primary method to protect people like Jack. But on the federal level, that task force has issued some useful pronouncements for federal laws.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Another question?
Well, there aren't any more on the screen here, but let me ask you this, Jonathan. I think, people think, the First Amendment. Well, the government's not telling you, not punishing you for saying a particular thing. But in Jack's case, they tried to punish him for not saying what they wanted him to say. So it's kind of like a compelled speech situation. Is that right?
That's exactly right. And that's a long principle that's been established, as far back as the 1950s, involving Jehovah's Witnesses. Can you force someone to put a license plate on their car that they disagree with? Or can you force students in high school to pledge allegiance to the flag? And the Supreme Court has said no. And so there is this long line of cases that say the government can't force in Jack's case, an artist to take, a pen and a brush, if you will, to affirm something they disagree with. And that really strikes at the core of the First Amendment, for the government to try to come in and really invade your conscience with that type of action. So it's an important doctrine, the compelled speech doctrine, that really protected Jack.
Well, and there was another case that came out about the same time, I think, as Jack's, the NIFLA case, right, with that pro-life or the pregnancy center out in California, where they wanted them to post information where people could get free abortions, and the court pretty emphatically said you can't do that under the First Amendment. Is that encouraging to you as a First Amendment lawyer? Do we have reason to be hopeful about where the Supreme Court is on these issues?
It's absolutely hopeful. ADF represented that pro-life pregnancy centers, and ADF has had a good run at the Supreme Court, and we're very thankful to have great clients with some of these great cases. As you noted, they are the government trying to force a pregnancy center to essentially advertise for abortion. But again, I just go back to the point of these principles protect everybody. The government shouldn't be forcing anybody, and that's a good way for people to explain things to their neighbor. It's like, hey, these principles of religious liberty and free speech, they cover all people. And when someone like Jack wins his case, that's a win for everybody.
Hey, Jonathan, could I ask you, we've only got about 3.5 minutes left, but because you defend all of these cases and stuff, are you encouraged? Where do you think we are? If you could take a spiritual pulse of our nation, are we gaining? Are we winning? Or are we under siege? Do you have a feel for where we are in this battle?
Well, I'll probably answer in a way that Jack would probably answer. God's in control, so I'm always encouraged to meet people like Jack. No one signs up to do litigation for 6 years. No one puts that on their bucket list. But Jack stood up for his faith because he thought it was important. And that's just such an encouragement to me. So I'm encouraged just by knowing the clients that I know and seeing those situations. And hopefully that will just spread, that people can see people like Jack and be like, hey, if Jack can do it, then so can I.
Amen.
Amen. Well, you know, ultimately the Supreme Court is a reflection of the political reality. And so we've got an election coming up in 2020.
Yep.
And it sure is important that people get involved and get out there and vote and participate and get informed, because if the United States Senate goes the wrong direction, then President's ability to put conservative justices on that court or any other court is going to be severely limited.
In our 2020 elections, I mean, it's possible that we could have another vacancy on the Supreme Court before then, because
right.
Ginsburg is, 88, I believe, and in failing health. But if not then, if Trump was to be reelected, it'd be nearly guaranteed that it would happen during the next term. So this is critical, and we encourage all of you to get involved. Do what Jack did, and instead of just taking what is maybe the easiest way out, we need to stand up for our beliefs, because it's not only affecting us individually, it's affecting our children, our grandchildren, it's affecting this nation. And I just read a quote from, I think it was John Adams, that if his descendants, if the descendants don't stand up and defend this nation, he was going to come back from the grave and haunt them or something. I forgot exactly what he was saying. But it'd be a shame for us to take the sacrifices that our forefathers have made and let it go aside just because we aren't willing to stand up and fight.
That's right.
They gave their lives for this. So again, Jonathan and Jack, we thank you so much for the stand that you've taken, and thank you for being with us. Once again, real quickly, a minute, could you give your web address again just so that people could contact you? Jack?
Yeah, my website is masterpiececakes.com, and they can contact me there, and I can direct them directly to ADF, so adflegal.org.
And Jonathan, what's your website?
Like Jack said, www.adflegal.org.
All right, thank you all very much, and God bless all of you for watching. I tell you what, I believe that Truth and Liberty is beginning to get some truth out there and affect the way people are thinking, and hopefully you're getting involved, and together we can make a difference. God is on our side. God established this nation, and we do not need to let it go. We need to stand up. So thank you all for what you're doing. Thank all of you for watching. And thank CTN for broadcasting this on their network. What a blessing. And so we're back here every Monday night, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and it's going to be a great time just talking about the good things of God. We got Abby Johnson coming up, I think, on the 22nd of April. The Unplanned movie was about her deal, so she'll be with us. Thank you. God bless you. We'll see you again next week.
Join us next time for the Truth and Liberty broadcast. Find tonight's episode and related articles and links at truthandliberty.net.